I'm here with Alison Rill, the Executive Director and the person who kicked off ACAN about 5 years ago. Alison, congratulations on tonight to start off with.
It's great to have people from the working in this space get together and share their stories, share the challenges, learn from each other. Networking is very important.
Oh, look, I can tell you, and you know this, I go to a lot of networking events, and I have to say, hand on heart, this is one of the most positive, energetic, and really optimistic events I've ever been to. It's wonderful. I think people are really here to help each other, support each other, learn from each other.
Yeah, certainly people who work in this space who are wanting to make a difference in the lives of the most vulnerable people, the most vulnerable workers in our economy. They're driven, they're passionate, and yeah, that's what gets them out of bed in the morning is to make that change.
And no more so than yourself. Tell us about why you're so passionate about modern slavery.
Well, I think the first time I kind of it's definitely experience around living in a country in the Asia Pacific as an exchange student, not speaking the language, being incredibly vulnerable, dependent on everyone around me for food, shelter, everything. That gave me an insight into the experience of migrant workers coming to Australia, where everything's culturally foreign. Just getting from A to B is a challenge. And then I think over the years, working in the slavery sector, particularly in horticulture, where I did spend a year in the slavery hotspots around, it was 15 local government areas across 3 states. And that was when I started to realise and reflect on the experience of my own father, who, aged 13, was taken out of school, put to work on his parents' potato farm in country Victoria, and was pretty much unpaid for 8 years. And just the impact that had on the rest of his life. And I think that's one thing with people who've been trafficked to Australia who've worked in as unpaid labour. Those years of not getting paid properly impacts on so many aspects of their life, and their families back home. They might not even get reunited with their families back home because of the shame of that experience of the sense of failure that they haven't earned enough money to send back home and support their families. And for a lot of people, that's why they're here working.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's not just a commercial side, it's a trauma, it's the emotional, the psychological.
Absolutely. I mean, the damage that's inflicted by someone who's, I mean, we know people in suffering family violence, domestic violence, any coercive control where you don't have freedom, you don't have control over your own money, you don't have the freedom to leave that really bad situation. That literally does damage for decades, and it might be the experience similar to being a refugee and fleeing a bad experience. You might not talk about that, you might not want to share that for years, decades.
And one thing I know that you're so, passionate about in another way is to really highlight the fact that it does happen here in Australia. This I suppose perception that it doesn't is absolute rubbish. It actually does take place here.
Yes, absolutely. I've met so many people impacted, they're exploited, they're in debt bondage. So, what people don't realise, and one of the biggest drivers of people being in modern slavery, in a situation of forced labour, 70% of time is because of the debts incurred in their home country through recruitment fees, through agents who have promised them a job in Australia. They're already in debt before they get here. So that debt bondage is the main driver of labour exploitation. So you've got debt, then you've got just that belief that they can't leave because they haven't paid the debt back, they're not sending money home. They're really trapped and they don't know how to escape that situation. So a lot of the time people say, oh, why don't they just leave? It's like, well, it's not that simple. You would say that anyone in a situation where they're being controlled, it might be they don't control their own bank account, they don't control where they live. If they leave the job, they might lose their housing as well. There's multiple dependencies in a situation will keep them there. So it's not just hours of work. It's
Every situation is different. Everyone's got their own different challenges. Tell us about ACAN, the programs and the services you offer.
Yeah, sure. So the Australian Catholic Anti-Slavery Network We have a modern slavery risk management program to obviously comply with the Australian Government Modern Slavery Act to assess and address and mitigate that risk. That's been rolled out across 80 hospitals. I think it's 20,000 aged care beds, 1,500 schools. So it's, when you look at the risk, it's really in medical supplies and construction, building and construction. But it's really what we're trying to focus on is the risk to workers on site. Who do you see on site? Who's cleaning? Who's doing the personal care in the aged care facility? Who's doing security? So it's all those labour hire services, particularly for any migrant workers. And when we find even people who've got permanent residency, they fear their PR being cancelled if they're threatened enough. And those threats happen all the time. So anyone in those situations is certainly vulnerable, and we're trying to address that through procurement, through contracts, through tender processes, and obviously working with to embed ethical sourcing into procurement practices.
And Alison, tell us about sort of victim support services as well. Is that something you can help with?
Yeah, so we have a separate agency, Domus 8.7 as a remediation service. So one of the things is for each business that maybe has a risk in their operations is to have a remedy plan, and to know that if an auditor, for example, comes across a worker living on site, which is one of the really strong indicators, what are they going to do? They don't have social workers in most, but businesses don't have social workers. They don't necessarily have migration agents. They don't have healthcare professionals. So that's where we can help. We accept those referrals if people have already left those bad situations, or if a business has a bad feeling about a particular contractor or a subcontracting arrangement, we can talk them through how to do safe engagement with that worker. So it might be that we can send somebody in to do a wellbeing check, for example, just to safely engage with the person that might be in a bad situation. The worst thing we can do is act and call the company and say, hey, what's with they look really tired, or they said they did 20 hours straight and, haven't had any rest days. And it's to tip off because then that worker will disappear. You never see them again. You get one chance to help someone in a bad situation. And the companies need to know they can't sit on that information for 4 weeks thinking about, what do we do? Who do we call? So that's why Domus 8.7 is available for phone service and assistance anytime.
Yeah, wonderful work. And I think that's what we want to help try and do, is to increase awareness, increase the wonderful, expose the wonderful work that you and the team are doing. I think that, and the network that you're building, the community that you're building, because there's so many service providers and support people here that genuinely want to make a difference. And the beautiful thing is there's some overlaps, myself included, but we're not competitive. Everyone wants to help people and help each other generate positive impact and eradicate this once and for all.
That's right. And often a business might have come across something that's not intentional, that they might not realise what's happened to those workers in that subcontracting recruitment process. So that's the other thing, is to kind of ask for help, ask for the expertise, raise, and what you're doing, raising awareness, is really the only way we can kind of help really vulnerable people.
Thank you so much, Alison. Congratulations again, and look forward to working with you more on global supply chains.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.